We're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. That's right, you're listening to Coming Out Christian, a podcast about life at the intersection of queer identity and Christian faith. This fun, faithful, and sometimes irreverent podcast is a production of Love Boldly, an Ohio-based nonprofit creating spaces where LGBTQIA+ people can flourish in Christianity. I'm one of your hosts, Siobhan Nelson, and my co-host is the Reverend Dr. Ben Hillscamp, Executive Director of Love Boldly. So join us, and let's find out who's coming out today. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out Christian. I'm Siobhan Boyd Nelson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am joined, as always, by...
Hello, folks. I'm the Reverend Dr. Ben Hillscamp. I use he, they pronouns.
Ben, today is St. Patrick's Day when we are recording this, and do you have any specific thoughts about St. Patrick or St. Patrick's Day? I kind of hated it growing up because I would always forget to wear green and people would pinch in my school. Pinching was a really big thing, and I hate being pinched. You have any like memories of St. Patrick's Day or anything that you like to do?
See, I, I grew up Catholic, so obviously St. Patrick's Day was important when it came around and the whole pinching thing. But I was involved in our community was a lot of folks that weren't Irish, and a lot of folks who were kind of like, well, we're not Irish. I mean, that's not our background. That's not our culture. So there wasn't a ton of St. Patrick's things where I grew up. Um, I just remember going to school and being like, what is this? What are we doing here? If anything, this seems more like an adult holiday for adult activities rather than, anything holy Christian, etc.
Yeah, I agree. And then there's the added layer that my name is Irish. So if you've ever seen my name and then heard my name and thought, well, that's not how those letters sound. Well, you're looking at it from English, and my name is not, from the English language. It is actually an old Irish name. So that does always, I do like to celebrate my name and my Irish name and let everybody know that that's why it looks the way it does. All right. Well, let's jump into it, Ben. It is time for another amazing guest. I think that we are going to have a conversation. Wow, I'm just really excited about where this conversation is going to go and hearing this individual's testimony, because when I've heard bits and pieces of their story in the past, it has always been just so eye-opening, and I've always learned a lot from them anytime we've spoken about their life and their testimony. So our guest today is NV Gay. NV uses they, she pronouns. With an immense focus on empowering and uplifting marginalized communities, photographer, digital artist, educator, public speaker, and writer NV Gay of Mixed Gays Creative Direction draws inspiration through their life experiences as a transgender individual. Their work explores topics of the human condition, bolstered by the words and lived experiences of NV subjects. With intent on treasuring individualistic self-expression, NV exposes the raw wounds of prejudice and abuse while advocating for the inherent beauty in being human. And I also just want to add that NV is a fellow board member of Love Boldly. That's why I get to spend time getting to know NV. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Hi, thank you, Siobhan. That was such a lovely introduction. And yeah, I wear many hats around here and I do a lot of different things. So thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to be able to talk about, my journey as being a queer Christian. And yeah, so let's get into it.
Let's get into it. All right. We like to start with the question, what is your testimony? What has been your journey of faith as a queer identified person?
Wow, that's a loaded question. So my journey has been a lot of people will find that my journey might mirror theirs in a bit. While it might not be the fact that of being a transgender individual mirrors your journey, but the way I kind of have my faith did. So I grew up in a Christian household, in a very non-traditional, just go to church every Sunday, go to Sunday school, that type of stuff, and learn about the Bible, read it when you can, all that type of stuff. Like we weren't overly religious, we were just practicing and using it for community. Um, and so I grew up in that, and I can't say it was horrible. I mean, there were times when it was great. I found good community. I found good friends in the church I went to. Um, did mission trips, did all this fun stuff. And it wasn't until maybe like around my high school years that I really started to, question my faith, question what was going on here. Because at that point, I was starting to question my gender and my sexuality and my reality, and trying to determine, well, what fits for me. And at that time, the church we were attending had started, you know, preaching about some anti-LGBTQIA plus things, talking about how being gay was sinful and whatnot. They never really talked too much about transgender individuals, but that's because it seemed like that didn't really much exist at that point, even though we all know it did. Um, and so we ended up switching churches in my like right at the end of my high school days because my family did not like that the church we were attending was, as my father said, was playing their music as a concert rather than as a part of the service. Which, okay, like yeah, I can't disagree with him too much because yeah, they were like really focused on a production value. So we switched to a different church, and this church was probably the bane of my existence. It was a mega church. It was one that the pastor was very anti-LGBTQ and would preach about it all the time, was very condemning, and also did altar calls all the time. If you're in the Columbus area, you might know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say the church specifically, but would do these altar calls where he would like force people to come up. He would like point people out of the crowd and be like, God is telling me that you need this right now, and force you to come up to get prayer. And there was one time he was doing it about gay people and was calling out people like who might have homosexuality tendencies or somewhat and to get prayer. And I remember I was sitting in the crowd and I didn't think I was homosexual. I thought, well, my gender is this, like, this is who I am. And I'm like sitting there in the crowd, like, please, 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 please do not notice me. Just let me go unnoticed. Let me go unnoticed. And thankfully, it did. Like, I went through unnoticed and I was just thinking, like, at that time, I'm like, this is not right. This is a man of faith is calling out these people and forcing them to come up. Like, if you want to offer people the chance to come up and receive prayer, yeah, that's great, but do it at their own ability, not forcing someone to come up and do it in front of a crowd of thousands. And so from that point, I lost my faith. So if this man is the man of God, then there is no way that there is a God. Like, that's what made sense to me. And so I lost my faith. Especially once I got married um, in 2014, graduated college, and then moved down to Charleston, South Carolina. Both my wife and I just did not go to church. We had no care for it. My wife has always kind of maintained her religion and her faith. However, at that time, we were not going to church. We didn't even care to find one. And then we moved back up here, and same thing. Did not care. Did not care to find one. Just lived our life, did our own thing on Sundays. Um, and then in 2018, I came out as trans. I finally realized who I was, understood myself, and came out. And luckily, thankfully, by the grace of God, my wife stood beside me and has stood beside me still. Um, but it was about after like I had come out and I had come out to my parents, and we had spent a year trying to make amends and make concessions to maintain the relationship. Did I finally say, fuck it, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. Um, did we actually kind of stumble into finding faith? It was we were looking for churches that were LGBTQ affirming. And we had found a couple and we had gone to a couple, and most of them just didn't fit. They didn't fit what we wanted and whatnot. They were either way too small or way too big, or just it didn't, like, there were no queer people. Eventually, we got to North Broadway United Methodist here in Columbus, Ohio. And I remember I was sitting in the crowd, and Pastor Marcus was up there preaching, and I don't even remember what he was saying. I can't, to this day, no idea. But I just remember I just couldn't do it anymore. And I got up and I walked out. And I walked out, went to like the parlor and just cried. And my wife comes up after the service and she's asking what's going on. I'm like, I just can't do it. And then all of a sudden, Pastor Marcus comes out and he's like, hey, I saw you left and I wanted to check on you. And like, we started talking, and he's like, I want you to come back in. I want you to just meet with me one on one. And I want to just talk with you about all this stuff. And so I did. I came in one on one and I talked with him for hours about faith and all this stuff. And I went through all my concerns, all my, how can there be a God? How can Christianity be the one true religion when all of this evil is happening and the Bible's condemning all this stuff and everything? And he just looked at me and he's like, the Bible was written by men. It's interpreted by men. We have to stay true to what God's message was throughout the Bible. And that message is to love and affirm everyone for who they are, not to condemn people for who they are. And it stuck with me that this man wasn't using verses to try to persuade me or trying to use theology. He was just using common sense. And like it opened my eyes and made me realize that, there is a place for me with faith. There is a place for me to have faith in God and have faith in this, and not necessarily like condemning others. And yeah, I guess it just, that was kind of my journey and my pathway back to religion. And I have to thank Pastor Marcus all the time for it, because he helped me tremendously find my way back. And now I'm at this place now where I am who I am. I have my faith, and I teach others through the same way. I teach others that, it's okay to question. It's okay to be yourself. There's nothing in the Bible that's truly condemning you. The stuff that's in there that is used to condemn is interpreted by man. It's interpreted and used the same way that it was used to validate slavery. Like it just, when it comes down to it, common sense says that, we are all human and we are all made in God's image, and God isn't a man. God isn't a woman. God isn't a human. God is this entity. I like to think of God as the universe. Like, God is all living things, all things around us. And so, therefore, when we're made in his image, it's not that we are made to look like him or her or them. We are made to be the essence of the universe, give back to the universe, treat each other as equals. And yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Envy. And it's such a beautiful story and to hear of a pastor, Pastor Marcus, and the fact that he took the time to sit and have a real person-to-person conversation, and the love that he showed in that moment. God's love was reflected in that
Hmm.
moment. And that's what brought you back, right? It wasn't condemnation that brought you back. It wasn't telling you you're going to burn in hell that brought you back. It was reflecting God's love to you that brought you back. And I wish so many more Christians would do that. If we just reflect God's love, that's what folks are attracted to. Um,
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, that's number one thing the Bible tells us to do, and it's the most forgotten thing. which is so
Absolutely.
sad.
It is. It is. You talk about how you are now telling others about, the beauty of being human and reflecting God's love. Can you talk about how you are reflecting God's love through your work? You are a creative, you're an artist, you're a writer, and what is that like? How do you? It seems to me like I would call that your ministry. Maybe is that reflection of God's love through your artistry. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess that's a very good way of looking at it. I've never heard someone call it my ministry, but I mean, I can't necessarily disagree with you. I think that yeah, I have ever since I left the teaching profession and came out as trans and all this stuff, I've been on a journey to validate, not just validate myself, but validate everyone's existence. There are so many of us in this world who are told contradicting things to who we are. We are constantly put down and forced to be someone the world wants us to be, or who we think the world wants us to be, rather than allowing ourselves to be ourselves. And that's a shame because each one of us has this beautiful and intricate just soul that needs to be expressed to the world. And I've allowed mine to come out, and mine is literally coming out as an educator. It's coming out as someone who is there to uplift and empower everyone, not just marginalized individuals, not just trans individuals, but everyone. Um, and yeah, I see that as God's love that I'm doing that message, and I'm not necessarily doing it through standing at a pulpit and preaching Bible verses and whatnot because I don't feel like God wants me to. That's not the purpose of my life. My purpose is not to use ministry in the traditional sense, but it, it's almost just to use my voice, my passion, and my knowledge to reach out and connect with people, make those human connections, and learn from each other. And I think that's the big thing. Like I say I'm an educator, and I am, but the biggest thing is as well, I'm a learner. I love to learn about people. I love to talk to people. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can think you are the most boring individual in the world. And to most people, you might be. But to me, you are the most interesting person in the world because you are the only person in the world who is like you. And that needs to come out more. That needs to be seen more. And that needs to be celebrated.
I will say that you are a one great at celebrating others and celebrating beauty, especially through your photography. I think is one of the ways that you really are able to showcase the beauty in individuals. Yeah. Um, Ben, did you have any questions? I don't want to hog the conversation.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, Envy, I was wondering if you would talk to our listeners a little bit more about your project, This is Trans, and specifically the ways in which you saw faith weave in through the stories of the people you photographed for that project, whose stories you were able to draw out for that project. Um, I remember in the different iterations that I've seen that project exhibited, faith was definitely spoken about by many of the folks you spoke to, from trans folks who are pastors and theologians to trans folks who have perhaps only at this point in their lives only a periphery of a view of religion of faith. So I wonder if you could comment a little bit more on that and again tell our listeners more about the This Is Trans project.
Yeah. So my photography is something that I love deeply, and I found a great passion in it because nothing excites me more than to take a picture of someone and see their face light up and hear them say, "Oh my God, I look beautiful," or "Oh my God, that's me." Like that type of stuff. And it is especially powerful for transgender individuals because most of them have hated their pictures throughout most of their lives, have hated the way they look. And are very nitpicky about the pictures that they take today. I mean, most trans individuals struggle with that because they struggle being able to find the right angle or find the right person to capture them. And, you know, when I work with these trans individuals, it's so beautiful to see them light up and feel euphoric, feel validated for who they are as a woman, as a man, as a person. And yeah, that whole project, This Is Trans, is based upon the fact that when I came out, um, one of the things I struggled with the most was this idea of passing and this idea of what being trans truly meant. Um, in the trans community, there's an old adage that in order to be valid, you must basically come out and then put yourself back into a cisgender role. So if you come out as a trans woman, you need to do everything and anything possible, both medically and socially, to basically transition from male to female and then put yourself back in the closet as female. And that's horrible. That's horrible. We have to completely change our entire life and change everything about us to fit this just outdated notion of gender. And, trans women can live like that. They can live mostly female or mostly according to the social construct of what a female person is, but still hold on to masculinity features or still hold on to things that they did like about themselves. They don't need to have every single surgery or do every single thing possible. Like if you look at me, my voice, one of the things that I struggled with for a while when I was first transitioning was I was trying to transition my voice. I was trying to soften it and do the things necessary. And I found I hated it. I actually like my voice. I've always liked my voice. It's always been something that I felt was a really strong part of me. And I just hated this idea that I had to soften it and sound like someone completely different. And so I stopped. I stopped doing the voice training and that stuff. And I'm like, no, I'm going to own it. I'm going to own who I am. I'm going to own this identity of who I am. And while I don't consider myself a woman, I consider myself to be very non-binary. I fall into more feminine traits. Most people would identify me as a woman, but that's okay. I'm fine being, that's why I'm they, she. I have mostly of that she personality, but the they still comes first. Um, and so that was a big thing with that project was to really showcase trans individuals for who they are and teach people that there's more than one way to be trans, that the only correct way to be transgender is the way that's correct for you. And so many people loved that notion. They bought into this notion and had people come from all over the world to be part of this project. We're well over 30 or 300 individuals part of the project. And there's a coffee table book you can get on my website that contains every single person. Um, and they all answered the question, what does being trans mean to you? And that's where, Ben, you talked about some people incorporate faith. And many talked about, how they found their faith again, or how they have no faith, or how they have faith in different religions. And it's not my place as a Christian to condemn someone or tell them that they are wrong for how they view the world, for how they see the world, how they have their faith. If I'm being completely honest, I see a lot of merits in a lot of religions. I actually take my faith and my idea of um, theology from a lot of different religions. I would say a lot of my stuff comes from Buddhism. I love some of the Buddhist philosophies, and there's one in particular that Buddha spoke of that there are 44,000 unique paths to enlightenment. And that really rung true with me, especially with this project, is that not everyone's going to walk the same path, but that doesn't mean it's less valid. It doesn't mean that it's any less valid. One of the things I hated growing up was like when I would ask questions about, are you telling me that people like Muhammad Gandhi are in hell because they're not a Christian? No, there's no way. Absolutely not. Like just because he had a different view of the world, he had a different upbringing and religion, that he would be condemned to hell. No, I refuse to believe something like that. And I refuse to believe that the creator would do something to that, to his creation or their creation. But yeah,
Yeah, I hear you on that. It's like, no, I think that person was actually doing the work of God. And even if it wasn't according to this specific theology, right? Or they were part of this specific denomination, that individual was in fact caring for God's creation, which means they were doing God's work, which, why would a creator condemn that person to
yeah.
hell?
One
Absolutely.
of the biggest things that infuriates me from Christians is this idea that, well, all you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as your Savior and you'll get into heaven. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're telling me the pastors who accept Jesus Christ as their Savior and then go and molest children are going to get into heaven? Are worthy of that? And on there's a show called The Good Place that I love. I love the
Hmm.
concept of the afterlife for that show, that our actions are merited and judged based on a point system, and that you have to earn a certain point system throughout your life in order to qualify for the good place. Like, while I don't think that's necessarily the truth, I think that that's a very realistic way of looking at things that say that, it's about how our actions on earth and our actions towards others and how we uplift and follow through with God's mission, God's will, in order to advance evolution, to advance the earth, and to help each other out. We're all in this together. And so instead of pushing each other down, we need to help each other out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ben, did you have any final questions before we jump into our query of the day? Envy, this has been an amazing conversation so far. I knew it would be, and everything, love it.
No, I don't have any other questions. I was just going to observe for folks that actually the original way Envy and I met was through their photography. Now, I'm not trans myself, but I was looking for new headshots for after I became ED of Boldly, and I wanted someone from either who was queer or from a queer in business, and quickly found mixed gay creative, and the rest is kind of history, as they say. Um, but but no, Envy, thank you so much for what you've shared. It's like Siobhan said, I knew this would be a good conversation, but this has been great.
I think you're missing something there.
What am I
What
missing?
what happened in that photo shoot?
Okay, so I wasn't gonna mention it, but yeah, okay. Um, Envy. So I have a problem with smiling on command. Very big problem, and Envy is one of I think three photographers and the only non-male photographer of those who have been able to get me to smile in pictures, and was able to achieve that yet again. Maybe a year or two later, when they did another set of headshots and shots for me as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was a beautiful moment. And it's not that I commanded you or told you, hey, you need to smile. It was that we built a relationship in that hour. We talked, we got to know each other. And it was almost just like you just let your guard down and you just let yourself shine through. And I think that's the beauty that I will do a lot of my work, is that no matter who you are, you can let your guard down with me. You can be yourself with me. You can be real with me. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to hate you. I'm going to love you for who you are.
All right, that is beautiful. That's a really great story. Also, getting Ben to smile. That's going to be my new goal, is how many times I can get Ben to smile during our conversations. Yeah, I know. Look at Ben. He's like, oh no, oh no. All right, so for our query of the day, Envy, it's kind of particular to you, but I kind of want to um, make it a little bit broader for everyone else. Because you are a photographer and because you have this ability to get people to let their guard down, and you can get to the essence of a person, who would you want to photograph? If you could photograph anybody in the world and have an hour with them to let them to get to know them, let them get to know you, build relationship, and then take a photograph that kind of revealed their true essence, who would that be for you?
That is a great question. I think, honestly, it probably changes a lot based upon the time. But if I were to do it now, I would want I would want to photograph Sarah McBride, Congresswoman Sarah McBride. I think that it would be a great time that not just because I look up to her and I'm inspired by what she does, but the woman has an impossible job being the first trans woman to hold such a position of power. And unfortunately, in that position, there is no winning. You're always going to be showcased and seen, and you're going to have to compromise, and you're going to have to lose a lot in order to gain a semblance. And I would just love to be able to have that time with her to showcase to the world who she truly is, not who they think she is as a congresswoman or as a trans woman, but who Sarah truly is as a person, what she loves to do, what she how she relaxes. And I think that would be beautiful.
That would be beautiful. That absolutely um, would be beautiful to, yeah, to get her out of that, oh, I have to be this person for everyone else. Because I do think that our politicians kind of lose themselves, unfortunately, in trying to be our representative or trying to represent the people. Um, I'm going to take the question a little bit differently. Ben, do you have an answer? Maybe someone that you would want to have a conversation with, if not photograph them. I don't know. How do you want to take that question?
Well, I was going, I mean, I'm not a photographer, but I guess I started thinking about that question in terms of someone, I don't know, of someone who, I'd love to be in the same space with when they were being photographed, perhaps. And two people kind of popped in my head at the same time. One is Eva Sedgwick, who is a long-standing and very well-written um, feminist and queer scholar. The other is Tim Gunn, who I've always loved, and who I think is probably one of the most fashionable, fashion-forward sorts of folks ever. Um, so one of those two, both queer, both very influential in their own fields, both with their own very unique types of styles. Probably Eva Sedgwick a little bit more than Tim Gunn, but still, um, I would love to have a conversation with either one. I would love to simply be in their presence for an hour.
Okay, that's hilarious, Ben, because I just watched last week a YouTube video interview with Tim Gunn called Post Run High. And he talked about his entire career and how he got to Project Runway. It's amazing. I'm also a huge Tim Gunn fan. Um, I'm going to take this a little bit differently. My creative outlet is actually making jewelry and making earrings in particular. And so I'm thinking about who I would want to make earrings for. I do love making earrings for people that kind of fit their personality. And the person that came to mind for me was Marsha P. Johnson. And because when you see the photos of her, and she has these amazing, I would say, not even a hat, but like a headdress, like it's just very intricate. And I would just love to just sit with her and talk with her and get to know her and then be able to design a pair of earrings for her to coordinate with one of her amazing headdresses. So we're going to post that question for you. Who would you want to have a conversation with, photograph, sit with for an hour, really get to know intimately out there in the world? All right, and now it is time for our moment in queer Christian history with Reverend Dr. Ben. This is when we remind everyone that not only have we always been here, we've always been here in the church. What do you have for us today, Dr. Ben?
So, unfortunately, I don't have a good piece of Celtic Christian or St. Patrick's related queer history to share, but I want to share the a project called Shower of Stoles. What was in the past known as the Institute for Welcoming Resources put together this project when still many Christian denominations, many of which have become affirming since, still did not permit the ordination of LGBTQIA plus people. Um, and what the project was, is clergy members who either had been denied ordination or had been removed from ordained positions because of their sexuality or gender identity, donated a stole, the traditional garment that looks like a scarf, that pastors and priests and others wear. Would donate one of these stoles to the project, and then this project would travel around. Um, it is now that project has now been digitized, by the the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, and is the collection of stoles is now held by the LGBTQ Task Force. I will put links to both of those where folks can view, um, and also get more information on the physical collection as well as the digitized collection, in the description for this episode.
Wow. Okay, you always blow me away with these moments in history. That's a really, really neat collection. I'm definitely going to check that out. Thank you. All right, y'all, that brings us to the end of another amazing episode. I, of course, have to thank our amazing guest, NV Gay. An amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us, and our listeners. Where can we find out more about you, learn more about your work, see the This Is Trans project, and just get to know you better?
Yeah, so thank you for having me on. It's been great. Love working with both of you. So you can find everything that I do on my website, mxgay.org, mixgay.org. Everything is there, links to my social media pages, links to my writing, my book, the Queer Allies Bible, my project, This is Trans, and even more. I also do a fun thing called Ask a Queer Question, where you can schedule a time to literally chat with me like this and ask your questions in a safe and judgment-free zone, which is always great for allies and whatnot. But yeah, you can find everything there if you want. You can find me on Facebook as NVGay, on Instagram, nv.gay, basically all social medias like that. And yeah, I would love to connect with you all. Please feel free to reach out, shoot me a question, or just leave me a kind comment.
Okay,
Wonderful.
I'm not letting you get off the podcast without talking about it. There may be a certain book, that I would encourage NV to talk about, and if they won't, I'm going to gush about it. But I will throw it to you first.
Fine. Fine. So the book he is alluding to is my book, The Queer Allies Bible. It comes out at the end of this month on March 25th. It is a all-encompassing guide and resource on how to be an ally and why your allyship is needed, why it's so important, especially now. It is not a textbook. It is an informational text that has been very well researched, but it's also woven in with stories. It's woven in with real life examples, Q&As, how to answer tough questions, and then as well like personal narratives of people from within the community. Like so, my own personal narrative called "Becoming Envy" is in the back of it, but you have ones about a bisexual person living in a heterosexual relationship, or a non binary teenage youth, or a queer Christian man who is a pastor, and what's that like? And a black woman from West Virginia who had to go through conversion therapy. Like, there's so much in there in the 200 and some pages that it's a huge resource that you got to read. And whether you think you're an ally or you want to learn how to be an ally or you're even a member of the queer community, it's a book that is imperative for you to read and pass around and share to people within your network, within your community.
Wow, that sounds like an amazing resource. I'm going to say yes, 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 get this. And also just point out that this is work, right? Like, NV, as a queer individual, has taken on the burden of writing this book and making this resource available. And the work of an ally, part of the work of an ally is to make use of the resources and to acknowledge the labor of queer individuals and the way that queer individuals are constantly opening doors to inclusion, affirmation, and building community across that cisgender queer line, right, or heterosexual line. So let's honor the work of NV Gay as allies, and definitely get that book and share it with everyone that you know. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you, NV. Thank you, Reverend Dr. Ben. And we will see you next time on Coming Out Christian.
Thank you for listening to Coming Out Christian with Siobhan Nelson and me, Ben Hilskamp. Do you want to see content like this continue to be produced? Then please support Love Boldly with a donation and consider becoming a monthly donor. You can donate online at www.loveboldly.net/donate. Join us next time as we continue to engage with people who proudly say that we're here, we're queer, and we love the Lord. And we're not going anywhere.